You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos Country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos Country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and with me, as always, I have my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, it's finally a little bit cooler out there. Are you getting outside?
Yeah, I have been. I was outside yesterday for a long time. Enjoyed some disc golf and some patio beers at a couple different locations. Some cold snacks, as they like to say. So, yeah, no, I've been enjoying myself for sure. And looks like it's going to be pretty nice all week. So this weekend, actually, I'll be heading to Kansas City, which is, I'll be seeing my sister get her white coat ceremony, so that's great. But I'm a little sad I won't get a chance to go out and camp or something because it's just been so ungodly hot here that I would have loved to take advantage of the nicer weather. But what can you do? Got to be down there for the sister to support her, and it's a big deal for her. So excited for that.
That's for sure. Yeah, no, I was excited to sit outside. I got a little cool this morning, actually, being outside. Almost thought about bringing out a little blanket, and I was enjoying that. Kind of made me think of fall weather, which always makes me think of football. And I just love that we are finally at a time where we can start talking actual play on the field. It's been a grind to make it through the off season, but we are finally here to talk some great football. And make sure, as always, that you're following us on Twitter because, we're going to have lots and lots of things to talk about. That's the great thing about this time of year. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH, and of course Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. And you can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. And make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating as we value your input. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and even that of YouTube. Also, make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports and the CBS Sports Digital, to find ours and our co-writers' articles and all things pertaining to your Denver Broncos. If you enjoy our show, make sure you head on over and leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, where Building the Broncos along with Huddle Up are found under the Huddle Up podcast. This podcast is powered by Overtime Media. Well, Nick, all I keep picturing at this time is it GIF or GIF? How do you say it?
It's GIF.
GIF. That's how I say it too.
It's GIF.
But,
this should not be debated.
Okay. Just making sure. But no, I keep picturing the GIF of the wrestler that's going, yes.
Okay.
And I can't remember what the name of that wrestler is. I'm not a big wrestling guy.
Me neither. Never was that into that. I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Could not tell you the wrestler. I could probably name 3 wrestlers total in my history. Just never been that into the fighting stuff.
Mm-hmm. Understand. But I just think of that because it is really just that they're back on the field. And yes, it is the practice field. And so far, most of the practices have not been with pads on, but it's still actual football.
Yeah.
It is. It's just when you're going through all the motions of, well, maybe if this player does this, this, and this, to actually hear what they're doing and the success, the failure. Even the times of failure, I'm going, at least we're talking about football. So I'm excited that it's all back. The Broncos got to start early this year, which is always a nice thing. Maybe the players don't like it, but at least us as the fans, we get a little bit more football story to talk about, plus 5 games in the preseason to give us all the more to talk about. Very, very excited. So we thought, they're 5 practices down now?
Yes.
Yeah, five practices in. They're going to have their first break as we're recording this. This is Monday. And so they'll have their first break tomorrow. But we thought we'd talk about some of the storylines that have really stuck out to us and just our thoughts on them and what we're hearing. And I guess you got to start with quarterbacks, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's always the storyline.
Right. Everybody wants to know about the quarterbacks and what's going on. And the Broncos have plenty to talk about with the quarterbacks. New quarterback in Flacco, who's probably going to be the starter this year. You got, of course, the second-round pick and lock. That is one of those players. You either love him or you hate him. There's some in the middle. But for most part, there seems to be a lot of controversy on your thoughts on him. Brett Ripien as well there, and as that undrafted guy that some are hoping to be that next darling undrafted quarterback. And, of course, then Kevin Hogan, the veteran backup that, I don't know, it's one of those – I feel bad for the guy because probably nobody's cheering for Kevin Hogan to do great. or at least that others are greater than him?
Hey, man, you don't know that. I never forget when I had did that article about how the Broncos should look into quarterback earlier this year, and I had multiple Kevin Hogan truthers comment on my article.
Okay.
So they're out there.
Okay, well, Area 51, come collect your aliens, get them back in the building. But talking about, let's just start with Flacco because he is the entrenched starter right now. What have you been hearing that you like, things that you don't like about him so far?
Well, he is turning over the ball a decent amount, and the Patrick Mahomes was a lot last year too. So, how much does that matter? But that's been an issue. Talking with Ben Albright the other day, he said that something he was concerned about was Flacco's having some issues over the middle third of the field, not reading it quite well, which is a concern considering the tight end heaviness and hopefully Deshaun Hamilton taking over this year. So that's not what you want to hear. And I guess the biggest takeaway is that he is running a lot, which is something you really do not want to see or hear about when it's training camp. If the quarterback, especially one like Joe Flacco, is out there running, somebody who does not want to run, that means that there are some issues going on. So that's the biggest thing for me. The interception's not great, blah blah blah. But I'm not too worried about it. It's still early. If it's still an issue against preseason games and training camp when we're heading down the tracks closer to the season, I'll be much more worried. But right now, and just it's notable, but I'm not worried.
Right. Something that always comes to mind when I'm thinking about interceptions, because I know a lot of people made a big deal about Mahomes last year, but I even remember with Peyton Manning that not that he turned the ball over a ton, but he still turned the ball over a lot more in training camp than you ever saw during the season. And he'd always talk about that of, I'm trying things just to see if they work in training camp because I don't want to go try them in a game and see if they work. And so that's always kind of stuck with me, of guys willing to take some chances. Like the other day when Locke had his 2 interceptions, and so people were like, oh, here we go. Now we're seeing the true Locke. And like one of them was a tip pass, and the other one he threw into about triple coverage, where I think he trusted his arm a little bit too much. And that's just a learning curve for him of, hey, okay, triple coverage. Probably shouldn't be throwing into that even though I have a strong arm. But with Flacco, yeah, I'm not worried about the interceptions a whole lot. The running around a little bit, I guess you can put that more on the offensive line. And part of me goes, is it because this defense is going to be that good that the offense is struggling that much? Or is it really the offense is just going to really struggle this much?
Gosh, it's you never know until they play somebody else, right? Like, it's always a double-edged sword. If the defense is playing great and getting turnovers, hey, that means that the offense is coughing up the ball. So you never really know until it's too late, right? Like, it's already like, oh, that's what it's going to be. When the Broncos go up against the other team in practice, they have the dual practices. That'll be a big indicator, but also the preseason games. But we're really not going to know until the season kicks off because of how the play calling is, how the games flow in preseason and whatnot. I mean, last year the Broncos played the Bears pretty close and got spanked by the Vikings, and turns out the Bears were the best team in the NFC during the regular season. So we'll see, definitely, but I'm not looking too much into it either way. Right now, I think the bigger thing is to look into how individuals are performing rather than how entire units are performing. Right.
And so, I mean, it does make me a little nervous. I mean, I have heard Flacco's been a little frustrated.
Yeah.
Just things have not clicked. Things have not been right. And it is tough. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders still isn't really going full go yet. He doesn't do a lot of the team drills from what I understand. And so it's a lot of the young guys. And so it does make me a little bit nervous when I'm hearing that they are not getting open. That even when Flacco has time, even when they do 7-on-7 drills, that the young guys can't find a way to get open. So I guess it's more I'm worried about them than I am about Flacco on some things.
Yeah. I know that we have Munchak and everything, but Flacco is not a mobile quarterback and not one that has historically been great under pressure, continuous pressure. So, I mean, that's one reason the Ravens invested so heavily on the offensive line compared to the weapons around him. So I will say that hearing that he's running around a lot in training camp has me nervous. I mean, there's no other way to put it. That's
right.
See these things where Deshaun Hamilton or Trinity Benson, et cetera, are getting open after 6-7 seconds. Guess what? You got 3. So it's a little bit of a concern. Hopefully, though, I mean, again, installing a new system, offensive line, gelling. I'm not looking too much into it, but it is an emerging storyline that we need to look into and be locked in on.
Yeah, it does crack me up when people get so excited about those one-on-one drills.
Yeah.
And they see a wide receiver make like 5 moves and then they get open. They're like, oh my goodness, those were such good moves. I'm going, you never do that in a game. There's very few routes where you ask a wide receiver to make more than 3 moves. If they can't get open in 3 moves, the play's done. Yeah. Unless you have like a Mahomes or an Aaron Rodgers or somebody like that, it's not going to work out well. Flacco, that's not going to work, especially with this offensive line having some early struggles. But I guess that then takes us to the more athletic option, and Drew Lock, the rookie who, I mean, it sounds like kind of, I guess you would say maybe what you expected. Some big splash plays, some things that you're just sitting there saying, okay, there's some potential here with this kid. And then you hear of other ones where he's throwing it in the dirt on some plays that should have been easy completions. And just kind of an up and down, just like we would expect with a rookie that especially is known as raw. Vic Fangio talked about it, of this guy did not play in an NFL-style offense in college. And so he's behind. There's things he has to learn about how to function in the NFL that maybe other quarterbacks that are coming into the NFL don't have to learn. So I guess, are you encouraged by what you've heard about him, or are you kind of going, we really can't depend on this guy to start at all this year?
I mean, I think I would say that I'm more encouraged than discouraged. I mean, the tools are there, the footwork is there, he's saying all the right things, and I think that the arrow is pointing up, but he's a guy that hopefully you can put on ice this year, and we unpack him maybe end of the season if the Broncos fall out of playoff contention, but I think that probably he's got time, and it's always been the thing. We talked about him coming in. Bronco fans need to be patient, probably need some time to dissolve the NFL, get used to the game speed, work on the mechanics, both the base and the release, and hopefully with all that and marinated in the system, we can really see him become a franchise-level quarterback. But just like we've been expecting, a lot of highs and a lot of lows. So I think that, as long as Flacco can stay healthy and the team can stay in contention, we'll probably ride that out this year, and I think that's probably for the best. They have that unquestioned starter, but it also is good that you have that guy that at least offers some hope in the background that if things do fall off, we can kind of play towards more of the future and ride that out with the young guy.
So then where does that leave Kevin Hogan for you?
Camp arm. If Drew Lock is not showing it in the film room or in practice or in preseason, then you can keep Kevin Hogan in there as a guy who you feel a little bit safer running the offense, and you don't have to predispose Lock before you want to put him out there. But right now, I think ideally you're going to have a 2-man quarterback roster with Lock taking that into quarterback 2 spot by the horns, and Flacco as the number 1, and maybe Brett Ripien as the practice squad guy. But Hogan's the insurance in case Lock lynches this first year.
So quick question, because I mean, just listening to people that are watching practice, a lot of you already mentioned Benjamin Albright. He's been pretty complimentary of Lock, actually.
Yeah.
If you listen to what he has to say about the kid, and pretty much saying that it is Flacco, then Lock, and then everybody else for the quarterback position. I mean, Flacco and Lock seem to be the 2 that just showed that they belong. Hogan and Ripien's been a little bit better lately, it sounds like, these last couple practices. But Hogan especially has had tons of turnovers. I mean, when do you make the switch to say Lock should be the number 2 guy? Especially when we're talking about training camp and getting him reps with guys that would actually make this team. When do you make that switch?
Well, right now, I think that it should already be trending that way, and we just need that Hall of Fame game, that preseason game, to affirm that. But I think it's definitely heading that way with Hogan's up and downs and the lack of upside compared to Lock. But right now, I have no issue with pushing him to be that guy who's going against the number 3s and 4s and fighting for that number 2 spot, because he's got to earn it. I mean, came into Missouri, and because of a suspension of their quarterback, he got thrust in there as a freshman, has developed some bad habits as far as the technique. And like, as Fangio has said, right now he's more of a power arm that hasn't fully become a pitcher yet. It's going to take a little bit of time as far as the mechanics and the mental side go, but they're making him earn it. So I have no issue with it. Hopefully he'll continue to improve and ends up being that guy. But I got to see it in the preseason games first. And, he's kind of been more of a gamer than a practice guy anyway. So I think we could see him really start to shine in that kind of atmosphere. But right now I got no issue with it. And I think that as long as he continues to improve and he embraces that, and, it's early in camp, things can start to wear down a little bit. Let's say he starts to get a little tired, those bad habits start to creep up again, then keeping Kevin Hogan around does make sense, unfortunately, for a roster structure standpoint. But he's got to go out there and earn it. So we're going to see how he does in the preseason games before we can really formulate that opinion. All right, but yeah, moving on now, we got another interesting area here that has been a big thing, I think, with the Bears and Fangio and Donatel in their history so far has been the turnovers that they have created, especially with not only the cornerbacks, but the safeties. And the safeties have been really standing out early in practice. I mean, Malcolm, oh man, I almost said it wrong. We have Kareem Jackson, who has been playing that kind of safety hybrid role, but I almost gave it away there. I'm really comparing his skill set and what they're using him as what the Eagles have done with Malcolm Jenkins. That really heady, smart veteran cornerback who they move him to safety, and he's kind of that matchup dude who's lining up all over the place. And I love that. I love that ability to get that kind of guy out there and let him be a jack of all trades and a matchup piece. You got teams flexing running backs out into the slot these days, or moving tight ends pre-snap and trying to isolate them against safeties or linebackers. But if you have a guy who can cover in that area closer to the line of scrimmage, like Kareem Jackson can, such as Malcolm Jenkins, and you got a guy who can really just be a much needed tool piece in how the game is evolving. So excited about that. But the guys who have been taking the ball away like crazy have been Justin Simmons and Will Parks. So that's a big deal. I mean, last year we saw how great, obviously, last 2 seasons even, how great Adrian Amos and Eddie Jackson being an All-Pro this past year were for the Bears. And part of that is obviously their talent, but a part of it is the scheme. And, you got Von Miller and Bradley Chubb up front. Hopefully the Broncos will be given a chance and to take the ball away, because, I mean, that's what defense is becoming more and more about in today's game. I mean, you're not seeing the low-scoring games as much, so the turnovers are huge. And seeing Parks and Simmons continuously take the ball away and make plays on the ball, I think, is a great indicator for this defense. But again, it's kind of that, like we talked about, that double-edged sword where if the defense is doing great, that means the offense is doing bad. So we'll see, but I'm definitely excited about the prospects of that safety trio, and even some of the guys behind him. I mean, Sue Cravens is a guy who's been starting to stand out a little bit. Jamal Carter coming back, who flashed a lot before he was injured. Trey Marshall's a guy. DeMonte Thomas. So I'm excited about these safeties, and I think that is an area that we could see a major step forward this year with this scheme and how these guys are used, especially compared to what we saw with Joe Woods and Vance Joseph the past couple seasons.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it before training camp even started, that is one of the big features of this defense, turnovers. Yeah. I mean, the Bears, everywhere the Fangio's gone, that has been the mark of his defense. They might give up some yards, but they're going to find ways to make the big splash plays that you need in games to win them. And like you said, Eddie Jackson, Adrian Amos, I mean, both those guys just they were definitely good fits in what he was trying to do. I mean, last year, what did Eddie Jackson have? I think he had 8 total turnovers between interceptions and forced fumbles. And Amos added another couple interceptions to that total. And so when you're getting double-digit turnovers from your secondary, at least, or your safety pair alone, that's a pretty good pair that's going on. And while I don't think Justin Simmons is as athletic as Eddie Jackson, I don't think Kareem Jackson is quite the box safety that Adrian Amos is. They still bring their own skill set. They can still go out there and do some things that are very, very impressive. I think Justin Simmons is a great fit in this system. And I love that I'm hearing that he is already showing that big play ability to go make turnovers. And, I mean, Will Parks has been right there too. He has multiple interceptions so far in training camp. You got Sua Cravens. I'm actually hearing good things about Sua Cravens.
Right.
Who would have thought that? I mean, we were talking, this guy probably doesn't make the roster, and now I'm hearing, one, he is very engaged in practice, very engaged in film room, just a guy that seems like he wants to be here and really is becoming that guy that the Broncos traded for, that they were hoping to get. And so, I mean, if he can continue up that trend, if he can show it in games, I mean, that's just another piece added to the puzzle of what the Broncos can do on the field, because he's like that joker where, if you watch his tape at USC, they used him everywhere. He played linebacker, he played safety. Heck, they'd have him come up and play defensive end sometimes and get after the quarterback. And so again, if the Broncos can get that kind of piece to have, the Chargers have the best piece at safety that there is in the NFL. But if Sua Cravens can be a fraction of that for the Broncos, it's just, oh my goodness. it gets me excited about what the defense could actually be. And so, again, when you're looking at all these guys added together, this is looking like a much stronger group than maybe some thought before the season started.
I think on paper, the defensive backfield is going to be better. I'm not sure if the front seven depth-wise will be better this season than it was last season. But that's mainly because I don't think that the edge depth is quite what it was. Maybe I'm overrating Shaq Barrett, but I still need to see it from Holland, Aaron Wallace, or anybody like that. So we'll see. And then now you have Todd Davis injured, so we'll see. But I am very much more excited about the defensive backfield. How these cornerbacks are going to stack up, the versatility and whatnot. I think that's big, and hopefully, guys like Cravens and whatnot make it really hard to be cut. Right? We were counting him out. The stuff we've heard about his attitude. More interested in advancing his rap career than being a football player. Those are things you don't want to hear about a football player. But, if he's making plays out there and can stay in tune and driven, he's talented. There was a reason he was a second-round pick. So, even if he's just like a backup kind of guy who can come in and play special teams and have that special role, because, I think you got Will Parks right now, who's definitely, I think, entrenched as that full-time strong safety, or that third guy coming in there with Kareem Jackson being that move-around piece. So it'll be interesting, and I'm just super excited to see how these safeties in the defensive backfield is used when the preseason games really start going and we can actually start diving into the tape.
Right. Well, I was going to ask you a quick question about that. It seems like, from what I understand at practice so far, Kareem Jackson has pretty much just been safety.
Yeah.
So, do you think
Malcolm
that's
Jenkins safety role?
Say it again?
It's the Malcolm Jenkins safety role.
Right. But do you think that's more of a sign of they think are trying out their cornerback depth and just seeing what they got?
I think that's where they want to put Jenkins. I think that's what it's more about.
Okay.
I think that he's a better fit in that kind of role where he can come down and be that guy that's, the reason he was really good in the slot and everything. The Broncos have like three of the best 5 slot corners in football, quote unquote corners. But I think getting a guy like there, Jackson that can come down and be physical there and be a matchup in a division that is very much pre-snap movement, aka the Chiefs, where you can kind of rotate those coverages and be versatile on that back end and, we'll flip the defense if you need to. But I think probably you'll see him more at safety, but we're going to see a lot of 3 safety looks because I think Parks and Simmons are too good to keep off the field. And I would say that Parks and Simmons together are better than what you have with Broncos second and third corner in Yadam and Callahan. But it's going to be interesting. So we'll see. It's definitely something to watch and see how they kind of fit these roles going forward.
Okay.
All right. Well, we're going to take our first break here, or I guess our second break here, but we'll be right back.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right. And we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I am Nick along with Carl. And Carl, I'm going to kick it off to you here. The tight end group. It's been one of the more interesting groups in camp so far. You got some guys, we're not hearing from some guys that we're hoping to hear more from, some guys standing out. So early takes on this tight end group.
Well, it's been a little bit of an up and down thing. You're hearing some guys having some success. Fumagalli, before he kind of tweaked an injury or whatever, was being a pretty consistent guy throughout this offseason. Hireman, I haven't heard his name a whole lot. It seems like they're really using him more as that glorified extra blocker. I don't think they're expecting a whole lot from him in the passing game. So we'll see how that kind of develops. Jake Butt, he's been out of practice here for a couple days as well, but he's making a few plays. The guy that's really been talked about the most, though, seems to be Austin Fort. And this is the guy from Wyoming, rookie, undrafted, 6'4", 244 pounds. And he's on the older end of things, 24 years old. But the reason that he really caught the attention of teams, and there's a lot of talk now because people found out that the Chiefs made him an offer and he turned them down to come to the Broncos. and which is, I mean, just icing on the cake, especially if he makes the team. But the reason that he caught the attention of teams is he ran a 4.56 40 and then also ran a 6.8 3 cone. So, I mean, athletically speaking, this guy fits the mold of what you really want when you have that stretch tight end that can really make teams have to respect what you're doing on the field. And then it also helps he came from a pro system there in Wyoming. So I'm hearing a lot of good things about this kid, making a lot of plays for all the quarterbacks. He's even got some time with the ones and Joe Flacco. And some people are almost a little bit concerned of that he's been outplaying Noah Fant. How could an undrafted guy be outplaying your first round guy? I guess I'm not too worried about it. I mean, if you're hearing positive things about Fort, then that's just another positive thing to add to the team. And even to the point that I'm hearing there's some talk of the Broncos getting some calls or at least putting out there that maybe one of these tight ends they're willing to part with just to be able to keep Fort.
That's great news.
Yeah, that's great news. That's showing that they think he is a positive, not that Noah Fant is a negative. And
that's exactly what I take away.
Right. And so and really I've been hearing better things about Noah Fant as training camp has gone on. He struggled in the beginning, had some drops, was getting beat in pass protection. They really threw him to the wolves there early on. And I mean, you talked about earlier of trying to drink from a fire hydrant.
Fire hose,
sorry. I mean, they put him against Von Miller in pass protection.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, did anybody expect him to be successful? I mean, even the best blocking tight ends in the NFL can't stop Von Miller. So that was never going to be his strength. That's never how they really probably planned on using him. There's only going to be a handful of plays all year where you're going to have Noah Fant stay back and be a pass protector. Just to show teams that you might actually do it. That's the only reason you do something like that.
I would expect a fair amount of kind of the false blocks, the chip release and then kind of get open.
Right.
Because the 49ers did that a lot with Kittle, and that's when, linebackers, safeties can kind of lose track of that tight end. I mean, how can George Kittle get so open? Well, it's because they thought he was blocking. So I think we'll see some of that. So he's got to be enough of a threat where they think he can do that. But I think that, the blocking is not why he was brought in. But, some very positive comments from Scangarello about his run blocking. So especially, he said specifically for the zone blocking scheme. So Fant, good athlete, very balanced player, and he does a good job, in that movement skill and can kind of, tag team a guy and then get to that second level and help seal off some area for a running back, whether it be a lane or a backside or anything like that. So they're excited about it. But if he's getting beat by Von Miller in one-on-ones, you know what, welcome to the NFL, kid. But I'm not too worried about that. Like if let's say you're going up against Joey Bosa and Noah Fant is continuously getting beat by Joey Bosa in one-on-ones, that's like Todd Davis getting beat by Sammy Watkins. That's on the coaching staff more than the player.
Right. Yeah. You're supposed to dictate what the defense does, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And so, if they're dictating that Fant has to line up against a Joey Bosa or Frank Clark or anybody like that, I'm sorry, that's terrible coaching. And so, but I mean, I think he has had a little bit of a welcome to the NFL. It sounds like he came in a little bit out of shape. There's been a couple players that have gotten after him. I've heard Emmanuel Sanders and Cortland Sutton have gotten after him because the way it works in training camp, you make a catch, and even when they tackle you, which it's not really a tackle to the ground, it's grab you, wrap you up kind of thing, they tell a player finish the play. So they just have him actually go run down the field. And there's been a few plays where Noah Fant has not done that. And there's been a couple other times where he really didn't stretch out for plays that some people thought he probably should have to really show that he's engaged and in there. But so again, I think he's had that kind of welcome to the NFL. You can't just go out there and rely on your athleticism to win.
Yeah.
You got to do the little things right. And so again, when I'm hearing that he's doing better now, especially that the pads have come on, I'd rather hear that than to hear, he did so great when they had shorts on. We already know that Fant is a superior athlete.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter to me. It's when the pads come on, can this guy still go out there and win? And I mean, I heard that when they were doing minicamp, most practices, he timed out as the fastest player on the field.
Wow.
Almost every practice. Now, Lindsay wasn't practicing. So, I mean, I'm guessing Lindsay would beat him. And Sanders wasn't practicing. I'm guessing Sanders would be right there with him, if not a little bit better, those kind of things. But, I mean, just shows the kind of athlete that he is. So now they're trying to work on turning him into an actual football player. And so, again, hearing that he's doing a little bit better just makes things that much better for the Broncos. And so, yeah, I'm excited about the youth of the tight end position. This is the first time in how many years to finally actually have some hope that the tight ends can produce something. 2014?
Yeah, when they had Virgil Green and Julius Thomas, right? That was the best. Owen Daniels came in and offered some for a little bit, but I would say that Virgil Green, Julius Thomas duo was probably the best they had in the 15 years.
Right. And so now to actually have maybe 4 or 5 guys that you could actually see being productive on the field, that is huge. Just makes it that much better. So I'm excited about the tight end group. I'm excited to see them actually get into a game and see what they can do on the field. It does make me a little bit nervous when I'm hearing all the quarterbacks keep checking down to the tight ends or the running backs on a lot of plays because the wide receivers can't get open. But at the same time, tight ends can be that huge matchup nightmare. I think of – I just watched a 49ers game when they were playing the Patriots back in 2011 or 2012. And, I mean, the Patriots had Gronk and then they had Aaron Hernandez. And, I mean, as bad as Aaron Hernandez is as a person, he was a great football player.
Oh, yeah.
And that tight end group, I mean, probably one of the best 1-2 punches as tight end ever in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely.
The team struggled so much to figure out how to cover those 2 guys. So the Broncos can get 2 tight ends to emerge, really, really opens up the entire playbook of what they can do.
Yes, it will. And I do wonder how they're going to use that personnel-wise. It does seem like it's going to be a more – we'll see. I guess it depends on what they do with what wide receivers emerge. Is it going to be a 2 tight end heavy offense? Is it going to be more of a 2 back heavy offense or 3 wide receivers? It'll be interesting to see how Scangarello kind of takes that step because he's not Kyle Shanahan. He's going to kind of diverge and come with his own path and philosophy. So it'll be interesting. But right now, I mean, I don't know how many tight ends are going to keep. Were they going to try to cheat the system and put Jake Butt or Troy Fumagalli on PUP to open that extra roster spot? Are they going to trade a guy to create that spot? Because there's no way they can carry 5 tight ends, right? Then right now there are 5 that probably are deserving. So we'll see how it shakes out. I mean, obviously preseason, maybe somebody will get injured and it'll kind of solve itself. I know Troy Fumagalli, like I said, Troy Fumagalli and Jake Butt didn't practice today, so it'll be interesting. But definitely intrigued to see how this tight end group develops and see who stands out. And I know that some people were upset about the Broncos signing Jeff Hireman. Well, maybe Jeff Hireman doesn't even make this team, whether it be from being cut or being traded. We'll see. But it'll be interesting. But I do feel better than I have for a long time about the depth of the weapons on this offense. And whether it be, all of them, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. I think that there is some young emerging talent there. So hopefully the offensive line and the quarterback can kind of catch up, and so we can utilize these young emerging players. Do you have any concerns with Noah Fant's kind of struggles coming out and some of the, I wouldn't call it attitude stuff, but telling him to finish reps? Is that a concern with you?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I guess it's not overly concerning, but it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
I mean, if 2 years down the road we're sitting there saying Fant is not a first-round tight end, we can look back at this kind of time and say, yep, this is why. But it can also be one of those things where this is really that way to motivate a first-round player, because sometimes it is hard to get them to think, hey, I have to still go out here and earn it. And so to have the veterans getting after you and telling you, hey, you're not doing your job, I think for at least you hope that motivates players. For me, I mean, that would be something that I'm one of those people, I hate to disappoint people. So if somebody like Emmanuel Sanders came up to me and said, dude, you're not doing your job, I'd be like, oh man, I am sprinting every one of these. And so you hope that that's how Fant responds to this. But it's still a matter of we need to see, can he put a bunch of practices together? And I do worry a little bit more about not so much that he's not finishing plays, it's some of the passes that I've heard that were catchable that he just decided not to catch.
Yeah.
That he's made a business decision that he didn't want to take the hit. And that was a concern coming out of college, that he's not great in traffic. So is that something that then you're saying, okay, yeah, this is carrying over? The guy has to be open to really make a play. Yeah. I don't know. I just you look at those things, and it's easy to see how you can 2 years from now look back and say, yep, that stinks that he did that.
Hindsight's great, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does it make you nervous, or how are you feeling about that?
I mean, I'm a little nervous, and there were some issues at Iowa as well, but I feel like that was more to do with his family than anything. Very outspoken family members on Twitter criticizing coaches and whatnot, which kind of became a distraction. But yeah, that's something that, got to put it in the work. And you were a first round pick, but now you're on the team, and if you're beat out by an undrafted free agent, just ask Paxton Lynch. It can happen. So I guess Simeon wasn't an undrafted free agent. Excuse me. Pardon me there. Essentially. But yeah. I mean, 7th round pick. But no, he's got to show it, and I'm excited to see him more and more. But I mean, the athletic traits and everything, we've talked about it on here. Just his mere presence, his athleticism makes teams have to play it differently, because he is a threat to go 60 yards on any play for a touchdown. And teams will do things differently just to make sure that doesn't happen, because that's a game-changing play. So need to see him finish it. I'm glad they're being tough on him and demanding it from him, because the tools there are to be exceptional. And it might take a little bit of time. It took Eric Ebron 5 years to finally emerge as a great tight end, and he was one of the best in football last year. So it could take a little bit of time, but man, just keep grinding, and hopefully he can stay healthy and motivated and on that trajectory. But I guess the big thing I'm worried about right now, and you put this down here under my header, which again, broken record, but the offensive line has been struggling. I'm looking at Joe Flacco's, week days 1 through 4 summarized in camp, and it's 2 of the pictures are him running. So like that's not great. Like you want your quarterback to be safe in the pocket and feel safe in the pocket, and that has not been the case so far. So far, he has been running around, and thank God they can't hit him, because otherwise he might be in trouble. Now, is that because the Broncos have really good pass rush? Possible, but the offensive line right now is not helping out Flacco, and given the fact that he is one of the least mobile quarterbacks in the league, I mean, he's going to be dependent on that offensive line. Yeah, I'm nervous about the offensive line, but, Mike Munchak's there. It's going to take some time, but, from Connor McGovern not snapping the ball consistently. Reisner's been solid, but Leary kind of been up and down. Juwan James been up and down. Garrett Bowles been up and down. It's a massive concern, honestly. And the offensive line, I've been definitely a defender that they've been unfairly talking down, especially last year. But with a quarterback like Joe Flacco, where I do stand by that, I think he's an upgrade to Keenum, but you do lose a little bit as far as that pocket mobility and escapability. So he's got to be protected, and the offense is going to be as good as Joe Flacco is, but Joe Flacco is only going to be as good as the offensive line is. So really going to be dependent on them to be solid. They don't have to be great. They just have to be solid. And, Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, like we said, dominant, probably one of the definitely top 3 edge duos in football. Could be the best one. So we'll see, but early indications, the offensive line have me sweating a little bit.
Here's the one thing that I do take a little bit of promise from. Is I've listened to now 3 former offensive linemen talk about the Broncos offensive line and what they've seen. And all 3 have said that they've seen improvement in just the technical side of things from these players. Now, it doesn't mean that they've made it successful, but they're seeing, especially like Garrett Bowles, he's not taking some of the false steps that he used to. That he's really getting into his set a lot better and a lot better depth, all those kind of things. They were talking about Juwan James. I mean, he's going against Von Miller. So, yes, he's going to lose some reps. That's just going to happen against any tackle in football. But they said it's easy to see, yes, he is the best right tackle that Von Miller's had to go against. And so, one, that makes Von Miller all the better, that he's actually having to go against somebody that it's not easy to beat. But, there's still concerns that you're hearing that they're giving up all these sacks, that there's pressure right in Flacco's face, like you said. but at least there's those little signs that maybe something good can still come. I mean, we had to expect Munchak. It's going to take time. 4 or 5 practices in, you're not going to sit there and say these guys should be a finished product. I mean, we really probably won't be able to tell a big difference or what to expect until we get to about that third preseason game where they've had 15, 20 practices, and then you're going to sit there and say, okay, they should be winning a lot more of these reps. And so, I mean, I guess I'm not as worried when I hear that Bradley Chubb or Von Miller beat him. I get more worried when I hear the backups beat him.
Yeah,
that's when things get a little bit more concerning. But no, I mean it is the one real unknown, possibly big time weakness that could destroy this team. I really truly believe that the success or failure of this team will fall on the shoulders of the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, we got Munchak, and they made an investment at Reisner and James, but the depth scares me, and McGovern's snapping inconsistency scares me. So we'll see. I do take solace, though, in Scangarello talking up Elijah Wilkinson so much. That makes me feel much better. You know, the guy played some guard, played some tackle. He's going to be pushing bowls. He can be there in case Leary goes down, and an undrafted free agent developing. And that, I mean, that's a Mike Munchak special. But like I said, it's arrows pointing multiple ways. You got the offense is going to be as good as Flacco can be, but Flacco is only going to be as good as his offensive line can be. So they're really the determining factor about how great this offense can turn around this year. So we'll see. I think that they're heading in the right direction, but it could be a year away still, and it could take some time for Munchak to develop this line. I mean, we saw year by year the Steelers' offensive line got better and better, but I mean, he had to develop Villanueva, and they brought in, one of the Pouncey twins to play center, and they already had DeCastro, who's a top 5 guard in football. So they had some pieces there. So I'm not sure if it's quite there yet on this offensive line. Then you got the issues with the depth, and you have injury concerns specifically with that right side of the line in James and Leary. So I'm nervous. I think that like we talked about, Pro Football Focus had them as the 12th best line in the season, but we both have them more closer to like that 20th to 16th. So we'll see. But Munchak is the guy, and we've been praising him a lot, but hopefully we'll see the our words meet the pavement, so to speak, where he really is getting these guys and get them to play better as a unit than they are individual. That's when that's when goal is happening.
Right.
So
now I will say I have heard that they've been doing some very good run blocking.
Yeah, but that was not an issue last year either.
It's true. It wasn't an issue last year, but at least it's still not an issue this year.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the offense is going to be the run game.
Yeah. I
think that's pretty well expected that's going to be the case, that Lindsay and Freeman are going to be the featured players on this offense. They're going to try to take as much off of Flacco and that offensive line to have to pass block as they can. Plus, it helps the defense. If you can run down the clock, if you can really churn out a lot of first downs, play the position battle, all those kind of things, play to the defense, it makes sense. That's the strength of this team. It's been for years now, and especially this year, it looks like it's got some opportunities to go make some big plays. But so, I mean, that's expected, but it's just good to hear that there's still good run blocking, that they're opening up some holes, that especially that zone system. I can't wait to watch it, man. I've missed it. I've missed seeing some of the things. I went and watched one of the Falcons games from 2016 today, when they played the Raiders, and some of the holes they opened up, some of the cutback lanes, just seeing running backs hit those, it just was pure bliss. As a Broncos fan, that's what you love to see. That's what we've seen for a big part of our history as a franchise. So to know that is coming back is very, very exciting. And so I'm excited to see what they can do in the run blocking, and hopefully that helps out a little bit in the pass blocking, where teams know we're a run-heavy team, so maybe they're not releasing off the edge quite as fast as what they could have been. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, that's the hope, but you still got to figure out how to pass block when they know you're going to pass. You can't win a ton of games if you can't do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we should probably take a break here, but we will be right back.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast, and we have a couple more takeaways, emerging storylines here from the first 5 practices and training camp, and this one for me is a big one. It's been one I've been pushing all offseason, even last season, but it is Phillip Lindsay, the running back, becoming a complete player. Now, is he ever going to be an absolute tank in the pass blocking game? No, he can go up there and square up against a free rushing linebacker because he's a dog. He's a little bit of a pit bull back there. I got no issue with that. But the big thing that I wanted to see with him this season was, can he emerge as a receiving option? You know, the days of guys like Adrian Peterson that, you know, just the absolute tanks up the gut, you know, they're valuable. But if you're not bringing it as a receiver in today's pass-heavy, pass-oriented NFL, then you're going to be somewhat limited. And last year we saw Lindsay, you know, solid in the pass game, didn't always look super natural in his route running or his ability to haul in the ball and transfer from that receiver to the running back. But early indications are he is going to be a big piece of this passing offense. Scangarello has talked about how good and excited he is to use him in the pass game. And Lindsay's talked about it as well, you know, taking tips from Sanders on how he can kind of do a little bit better in and out of his breaks to create separation. So Lindsay, for me, developing as that complete 3-down running back that, you know, you can flex him out and isolate him against a linebacker. I mean, hello, that's where magic happens in these type of offenses. And we've seen it with guys like, you know, you got Freeman and Coleman in Atlanta, or even, you know, you had Breida last year, Breida with the 49ers. You know, they have some guys there, but they really do like to isolate the running backs and use them in the pass game. And let's say the offensive line isn't doing great. Good way to nullify that is if you have a running back who can get out open quickly, and then, you know, you can essentially run the ball through the air, kind of like the Patriots have all these years, where you can use really high percentage pass plays to the running back, you know, maybe 5 yards, maybe 6 yards, but you do that 10,000 times and it ends up being a touchdown. So I'm really excited to see what Lindsay can do in the pass game. I was concerned with his wrist injury. You know, is that going to slow him down? Apparently hasn't been an issue so far. So really, I'm stoked about that. And I am rubbing my hands at the thought of getting Phillip Lindsay in a PPR league, even though I think the carries are going to be maybe even leaning more towards Royce Freeman. If Lindsay can become that guy that's getting, you know, 3 to 6 catches a game in the pass game, that could really push him over the top and really make him one of the most unique young running backs in the game.
I was trying to think how many catches does that give him? That'd probably be around 60 catches for the year.
Yeah, I think if you get him 50 to 60 catches on the season, that is gold. That's what we want to be going for. And again, hearing that they want to use him in the pass game, and that's a big part of this offense, that's just got me grinning. Because, I mean, look what the Saints have been doing. Look what the Patriots have been doing. The Panthers with McCaffrey. You know, running backs, they are devalued in today's league. But if you can have a running back that can do stuff in the pass game, that completely changes the conversation.
Right.
And if Lindsay can do that, I mean, I love the running game. It's fun. I got to, because I'm an Iowa fan. I got no choice there. But if he can bring that extra dimension and then be a threat in the pass game, there's just so much more opportunities for explosive plays. I mean, you get that speed out there on the edge instantly with less defenders that he has to go through, because, you know, he doesn't have to worry about getting through the box. He just has to beat a cornerback and 2 safeties and a linebacker. I mean, good night, right? Like that just adds so much. And also there's less weight, I guess, that he's going to take from the touches, right? Like, you know, if they're throwing hospitals out there like Case Keenum did last year against the Texans and Kareem Jackson comes down there and kills them, that's one thing. But in theory, you know, you can kind of protect some of those touches. So I'm really excited to see what he can do if he can really develop into a pass catcher, because with his speed and his dynamic ability with the ball in his hands, that really takes him to the next step. And he was great last year. He was great, but that could make him truly one of the topper echelon running backs. I mean, I was a big fan of Leonard Fournette coming back, but in hindsight, his limitation in the pass game limits his value. The game isn't what it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. Right. You got to have a guy who can do that. So if Lindsay can do that, which did not see great indication of that last year, though he did catch a fair amount of balls at Boulder, but granted, you know, who's he fighting 4 touches with? I mean, when you have a guy that talented, it's kind of like what the Hawkeyes did with Akram Wadley, who's not even in the NFL right now, but he was that much more dynamic than other guys they had, so they're going to force feed him targets. But Lindsay, if he can take that pass catching next step, man, the offense is going to be so much better. And it makes him more valuable. I mean, you can get him out there with Royce Freeman. You can get him out there in an audible. The pre-snap motion. I mean, so much stuff that they can do to create chaos. I mean, looking at what the Andy Reid has done with the Chiefs. I mean, Tyreek Hill pre-motion, moving around Kareem Hunt when they had him, or Damian Williams. I mean, that pre-snap motion, and you have a running back you actually have to respect, and you flash him out there when you're against, let's say you're lined up with Janovich and Lindsay back there, and then all of a sudden Lindsay, you motion him out to slot, and you got a freaking 250-pound linebacker against him. Give him that slant. He's getting 20 yards. So I couldn't be more excited about that, and it's something I've been screaming for on this podcast. And if he can do that with his dynamic ability with the ball in his hands, I mean, the offense, I think the offense has a chance to be so much better this year, even better than I thought it was going to be, because I did not see him taking that step this year, given the hand injury and the lack of comments about it, and not seeing it last year. But they're talking it up big time this year, and with it being a part of the offense, I can't imagine it not being there. So that's the big thing for me. Lindsay growing in the pass game could be just so big.
Here's the two plays that I love off of having Lindsay say move out into the slot position. These are the two plays that always stick out to me. The Broncos did this a couple times when they had Peyton Manning, where they would have, I think it was Moreno that would go out to the slot position, and then they'd have Wes Welker fake like he's going to block and then take off down the field. And so all the defenders would come up thinking screen, 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 and then here comes Welker releasing off for a big play down the field. And so I picture like Cortland Sutton being out there front looking like he's going to block because he's a big old boy, but then a guy that can just run down the field and make a play. The second one for me is to have Freeman on the field and Lindsay on the field at the same time, and you do that delayed handoff, or it looks like you're going to hit him for a screen, and then boom, here he goes. Freeman up the middle, pick up 5-6 yards on a play, easy yards. I don't know. Those are the two plays. I mean, like you said, you could just build off of that so much.
I mean, look at the Saints. Their number 2 passing option is a running back. They got that dynamic guy, Michael Thomas, playing that slot, but like everything else runs out of Kamara in that pass game.
Right.
And then look at what the Panthers. I'd argue that Christian McCaffrey is their number 1 pass weapon.
Yep.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley is the Giants' number 1 pass weapon. So having a running back that can do that, I mean, essentially another wide receiver that can play that slot and be moved around and catch, tossed out of the backfield. And the Patriots were so ahead of everybody else in that regard. But that needs to be a part of your game as a running back if you're going to, truly be a good to great one.
Right.
And I think that Lindsay, I've been skeptical. I've always been, you got to prove it to me first. But the early talk about it has me, I mean, dare I say, excited. Not to get out of my lane here. Remember, I'm supposed to be the negative guy. But
come on, negative Nancy.
Yeah, right. Negative Nick. But yeah, that's I'm really excited about that, and I think that is something that I need to see it to believe it. But if he can do that, man, I'm stoked. That's how I use him in Madden. That's how I use all my running backs in Madden. If they got the box in there and I have a pass play, let me just send that running back in motion before the snap, get him in the slot. Oh, I got a 4-6-5 linebacker against him. Let me create space, whether it be an out or a slant or something running in the flat, and he's going to beat you unless you call something, and then I'm going to execute or pick on somebody else.
Right.
But that needs to be a thing, and that, I mean, it changes how they have to play pre-snap. I mean, if he can establish that, the offense, the weapons, and everything is going to be so much more dynamic. And they don't have that. I mean, Booker is solid, but when he's out there, it's probably a pass play. But if you can have that between the tackles ability, that speed, and transfer that to the pass game too with Lindsay, look out. And if the offensive line is struggling, not great, but all the better, right? Because then you don't have to worry about the down the field stuff with Sutton as much, or Sanders. You have that quick option where you can develop explosive pass plays. So
right. Obviously,
I've been ranting about this now for 10, 15 minutes, but I'm really excited about this development.
It's true. I loved right before we started our podcast here, he's like, I got a lot to say about this. I got some thoughts.
Yeah. I've been screaming for this, right? Like this has been like, you got to do this.
Right. We talked about it last year with the offense where they just ignored the running backs. There's so many times where you'd watch them go out into the flat, and there wouldn't be anybody within 15 yards because teams wouldn't respect it because they knew the Broncos just didn't go that way.
Yeah.
And you're going, that's an easy first down right there. Easy pass, easy first down. And nothing. And so to actually tell your quarterbacks, hey, this is going to be even sometimes our first look in the offense, that is great to hear. And to have dynamic players like Lindsay, I mean, he really is. You look at this entire roster for the offense, you're trying to find somebody that can be dynamic. I mean, Noah Fant is, but Lindsay, when you're talking about a guy that has like 4.3 speed, that's dynamic. And like you said, you get that ball in space with him. We've already seen what he can do with the ball in space, and that's just him running between the tackles. And so, yeah, you get it in the passing game. It's definitely the great way to really get him some touches. And this is why we keep saying that there's a chance that Royce Freeman could have more carries this year than Lindsay. Now, overall touches, I still expect Lindsay to be the overall touch leader in the running back group. But you're trying to maximize the touches. And for Lindsay, that really does mean getting him out in space because he is so dynamic in space. That's how you really keep teams having to be honest, where they're having to worry about Noah Fant going over the top, Lindsay out in the flat or running the slot or running the slant pattern from the slot. You have to worry about the run game. I mean, you're trying to make teams have to worry about as many things as possible. And right now for the Broncos, because they don't have quite that deep threat, there's other things that you have to do. And Lindsay really plays a big part in that to help things for Cortland Sutton, to help things with Emmanuel Sanders when he gets fully healthy, Deshaun Hamilton, all those guys. Lindsay can really help open up everything for them as well.
Yeah, no, and it's about creating explosive plays, right? Field flippers, whether that be, helping the defense out or guaranteeing that you get some points on the board. But explosive offense is really important. And that's the reason we're seeing a guy like Cliff Kingsbury get a chance. The air raid, people are looking to create more explosive plays, pass game, run game, getting guys in space quickly, and then letting the athletes do the rest. And Lindsay becoming a receiver really could be that next step in the evolution for the Broncos offense. So
right. Well,
excited about that.
Well, you already mentioned, you look at some of this is fantasy football. But you're looking at some of the running backs that are making the biggest impact, especially even in fantasy football. Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, those kind of guys.
Saquon Barkley, Le'Veon Bell.
They're getting a lot of attention. And people saying these are top 5 running backs because they're able to have those dynamic plays.
Todd Gurley. Yeah,
and
it's big.
Yeah, it is. So, it's just the evolution of the running back position. And it used to be the big bruisers like the Leonard Fournettes. Now it's becoming the Phillip Lindsays.
The shiftier, faster guys where maybe you don't get the necessary, you're not going to hand it to them 25 times against a stacked box, but instead it's the guys who can do the most with the touches.
Right. And speaking of a guy that maybe could be getting a lot of touches this year, more than people think, this is our final really big storyline that's really been sticking out at practice. Now, a lot of the wide receivers have been struggling. You've heard of a lot of drops. Cortland Sutton, this was a problem last year. It shouldn't be a problem this year. But yet it still is. That makes me a little bit nervous. That's not the guy I'm speaking of. This is a wide receiver that I think most of us really just didn't know much about, right? There's very little film out there because he was always hurt in college. And Broncos took him much higher than anybody ever thought that he was going to go. Some people thought he was going to be an undrafted wide receiver. Broncos took him in the 5th round. That's Juwan Winfrey, rookie. And this guy has really been the talk of camp. Chris Harris himself said 15 is nice. If you didn't know who 15 is, that's Juwan Winfrey. And, he's been making catches, tough catches, diving catches. He's been the one guy that seems to be getting open on a semi-regular basis. This could be that wide receiver that really emerges for the Broncos, that he's not going to be waiting a year, but actually ready to make some plays this year. And to me, this is a little bit of maybe a wake-up call for Cortland Sutton that even though you're the 2nd round pick, expected to be maybe that number 1 wide receiver this year, you might be losing a few snaps to this kid. I'm a little disappointed in what I've heard Cortland Sutton so far, aren't you?
Yeah, he's been one who's been dropping the ball, and I think Hamilton and Winfrey have been bigger guys for them so far. So Sutton, you talked about Sutton was given Noah Fant a hard time, needed more from him. Well, Sutton, you said you were going to be the number one this year, but early camp indications are not saying such. You're the guy who's struggling the most and the one that they're going to depend on. So, I think he'll get it around, but I'm concerned about that.
Right.
Why?
Right. So it's at least nice to hear that this rookie's really showing up. Phillip Lindsay, did you hear what he said about the guy?
No, I did not.
You did not? Okay. Well, see, he was saying that when Juwan Winfrey got to Colorado, everybody thought this guy was going to be a first-round pick when he went to the NFL because he was making so many plays in practice. They just were all mesmerized by him as a wide receiver. And, of course, like I said, injuries really zapped any kind of opportunity for him to show too much in college. But he was at least showing enough that the Broncos thought this kid shows some promise. And so they were willing to spend a 5th-round pick, trade up for this guy, all those kind of things. And so far, that bet is looking like it could pay off pretty decent even this year. So I'm excited to hear about what this kid's doing. He's been getting a lot of first-team reps. He's been making plays for all the quarterbacks. And so I really am. This is one of the guys I'm going to keep a very, very close eye on when preseason games start. Because if he's really still going out there and making plays during the games, man, I really think he could skyrocket up. And like I said, I think even Cortland Sutton, this is a new coaching staff, man. Just because you were a 2nd-round pick for the last coaching staff doesn't mean you've earned anything with this new coaching staff. And so if Winfrey's the better player, and he's a part of what this new coaching staff helped pick, it really would not shock me if he starts getting some more reps and Sutton gets put on the bench here even during training camp just to kind of send him a message and say, hey, step up. Because that's exactly what this coaching staff seems to be wanting to do is challenge some of these guys, make them have to realize you got to do the little things. And for Sutton, it is really just catching the football. I can't believe that this is still a struggle for him because he didn't see this much in college. That was one thing I didn't really question a whole lot when he was coming out was his hands. The guy just seemed to catch a lot of things that were even close. Jump ball guy, he somehow would come out with the football. But I worried more about his route running. Now I'm not as much worried about his route running. I'm worried about can this guy consistently make the plays you need him to make because those drop passes, when this offense could be a little bit limited this year, a drop pass hurts it all the more. It's hard for them to make up for a play like that. When you're talking about like the Patriots or the Chiefs or the Saints or anybody like that, a drop pass, oh, big deal. We'll just throw it 50 yards down the field on the next one. Broncos don't really have that kind of opportunity this year.
You're right. We're definitely depending on him to take that next step, and that's a little bit disappointing, but really excited to hear about Winfrey. And I think that, when looking at guys fitting roles, they don't really have that true speedster, but you got that slot twitchy guy that can win quickly, Hamilton. You got that bigger, crisper guy that's kind of, move around, can be down the field, but do a little bit more. Maybe the Sanders replacement down the line. That could be Winfrey. And you got the X and Sutton. So hopefully that'll turn out that way, but we will see. All right, you got anything else you want to talk about here before we wrap it up? We're getting a little bit long on this one.
No, I think that pretty much covers a lot of what I've heard at camp and things that have me excited, things that have me worried.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos, covering the emerging storylines early from training camp, powered by Overtime Media. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. And make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliated 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports Digital, to find more content covering the Denver Broncos. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment, as your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. Also, you can leave a comment on YouTube as well. I'll see it on there, and I'll share it with the staff, and we'll get a laugh out of it or talk about it or anything. I saw somebody the other day had a comment. I guess this is my time. I can talk about this. Let me see. Let me pull it up here real quick. So I guess I'm the Eeyore to you being the piglet, Carl, but here's the comment. I have the name blacked out, but it's on YouTube if you guys want to see it. Why is Nick Kendell always so negative on the Broncos? His opinions, his comments, or so negative, is ridiculous. I'll predict going to be maybe 6-10, really, Nick Kendell. Your analysis is just expectations, or lawyer analysis is whale all the negativity. I'm sorry, sucks. So if you guys have any dingers like that to send me, I love it. I love the criticism. Granted, I think he was typing on an iPad or something. I'm not sure. Maybe his English is a second language, kind of hard to read that, but I hear you guys. I don't think that I'm negative. I'd say that I try to be more a realist than anything else, but even if your comment is that, I appreciate it. So you guys leave a comment on iTunes or YouTube or anything, message me on Twitter or Facebook. I'm about it. I try to be very open and communicate with you guys because we're all pulling for this team, and I'd rather have an open, honest conversation. So I appreciate it, even though it was a criticism on my part being the too negative. So Carl, I appreciate you being positive to counteract my negativity.
Hey, that's why we work well, man.
You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you guys soon. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.